In this video, I'll demonstrate how to create a custom Kinetic protocol in MyAssays Desktop and publish that protocol to myassays2.com. By publishing my protocol online, I can share a link to the protocol with colleagues, allowing them to perform the custom analysis without the need to have MyAssays Desktop installed on their own PC. Recall that kinetic assays involve measuring signal changes at each well over a period of time. This captures the dynamic behavior of a reaction. The data can be presented with timestamps for each of the collected measurements or as a time-independent series called cycles, depending on the analysis requirements for the assay. I have an example measurement data file for my kinetic assay, for which I'd like to create a custom analysis. Opening the file, you can see for each position there are multiple measurements without time values. My assay is a cycle kinetics assay. To begin, I'll open the MyAssays Desktop Explorer and select New Protocol to launch the New Protocol wizard. I'll select the My Data is in a file or spread across multiple files option and press Next. Here I'll browse for and select my measurement data file, and leaving the Automatically Import Measurement Data checkbox selected, I'll press Next. Next, we can select how our data is arranged, in my case a 12x8 96 well microplate. On the next step, we can see that our data has been successfully imported, and using the tabs at the top of the screen, we can view the data in different formats: in the pad format, the chart format, where we can see each position in greater detail, any imported metadata, and the original source file. On the next step, we can define the sample types included in my assay. For this assay, my layout contains unknown and standard samples, so I'll make that selection and press Next. Here we can select the layout used in our assay. In this case, I'll select the layout with 8 standards and horizontal duplicates in columns 1 and 2, with unknowns in duplicate filling the rest of the plate. Note that if there's not an existing layout matching your layout, you can edit existing layouts or select Create to create a new layout from scratch. Next, we can see the measurement data with a plate layout overlay, and here we can name our assay and optionally add a description. I'll call this assay Kinetic Assay via Linear Regression and 4PL Curve Fitting, and I'll add a description matching the analysis we're going to perform. First, we'll calculate the slope of the kinetic plot, and then perform a 4PL curve fit. Pressing Next will allow us to view our protocol summary, and pressing Finish launches the protocol. Once our protocol has opened and our results have been calculated, in our sample table we can see the sample IDs, their positions, and their raw thumb plots. Next, let's add some analysis steps. As we added in our description, I'd like to perform a few calculation steps. I want to first calculate the slope, or M parameter, of the linear regression to report the rate of the reaction. Next, I want to perform a 4PL standard curve fit using the slope to calculate the concentration values for each of my unknown samples. And finally, I want to report the percent CV of the concentration of the replicates. Opening the Properties control and selecting the Transforms tab, we can configure our analysis stepwise. I'll select Add at the bottom of the screen, and here we can see all the applicable transforms for our data type. The XY transforms include a series of transforms where the input is XY and the output is XY, meaning that the input data and output data will be in the same format, a kinetic plot. Below these, you'll find the XY reduction transforms, where the input data is XY and the output data is endpoint. In other words, the input is the kinetic data and the output will be a single value for each position. The first transform I'd like to add is the XY reduction fit parameter transform. So I'll select that transform and press Create to add the transform to our protocol. I'll rename the output matrix Slope. In the settings to the right-hand side of the screen, we can update the axes settings, the range, fit method, parameter reported, and output units. I'll leave the fit method set to linear regression, but I'll update the parameter to M to report the slope. Next, I'll add the standard curve fit transform. This time, when we press Add, you'll see a lot more transforms available. This is because we've now added an endpoint matrix to the available data, so this assay is now compatible with XY transforms and endpoint transforms. I'll select the standard curve fit transform and press Create. On the right-hand side, we can see a lot of different settings available for customization. The default is to plot on semi-log axes with a logarithmic x and a linear y-axis. Below this, we can see the calibrator settings. I'll use this drop-down box to specify my standard concentrations, starting at 2.5 and following a series multiplied by 2. Next, you can see the chart settings. Optionally add evaluations and the fit method settings. I'll leave the fit set to the default 4PL, but using this drop-down box, you can see we have a lot of different options available. You can also add weighting, constraints, etc. to fully customize the fit. In the out of range label settings, you can add a custom label for samples with values outside the range of the curve. I'll select to add greater than curve for those samples above the curve limits and less than curve for those samples below the curve limits. And the last transform I'd like to add is to calculate the %CV of the concentration values of our sample replicates. I'll press Add and select the percentage coefficient of variation transform and press Create. For each transform you add, you can update the input matrix to any data that matches the required data type. So, for example, I could select to calculate the %CV using any endpoint matrix available, in this case, either slope or concentration. I'll leave the concentration matrix selected. Now, let's recalculate. Now in our sample table, you can see additional columns for our calculated slope, concentration, and %CV values for each of the samples. Following the sample table, we have our curve chart, limits of quantification, curve fit equations, coefficient values, and goodness measures, followed by the curve data table. To see the XY reduction fit parameter or standard curve fit in an interactive view, open the tabs at the top of the screen. Back on the Report tab, let's make a few changes to our report. I'd like to change the numerical formatting for my endpoint matrices and separate the report content onto different sheets for the sample tables and fit results. Opening the Properties control, this time I'll select the Matrices tab. Here we can update how the data appears in the sample table. I'll select Slope, Concentration, and %CV and update the numerical formatting to 2 decimal places. Note that you can select multiple matrices at once by holding Control and left-clicking on the matrices to be included. I'd also like to report the average concentration and add value bars. I'll select concentration, and using the sample table replicates drop-down box, I'll select average. I'll also select the display value bars checkbox. Next, I'll open the Report tab. Here we can see the report elements in the left-hand pane, and for our assay we have a sample table and our standard curve fit content. Selecting each of these elements will display customization settings. For example, looking at our sample table, I'd like this only to contain unknown samples. So from the Sample Types drop-down box, I'll deselect Standard. I'd also like this to appear on a separate sheet, named Unknown Results. So I'll add that to the sheet name field. Now I'd like to add another sample table to include only my standard results. So I'll select Add Element from the bottom of the report pane and select Sample Table. I'll again use the Sample Types drop-down box to deselect Unknown, so this sample table will only contain our standard samples, and I'll add this to a sheet named Standard Results. The order the elements appear in the report tree is the order in which they'll appear on the report. I'd like my unknown results to appear first, followed by my standards, and then finally the fit details. So I'll move my second sample table to appear directly below the first by using these arrows. Notice that within the sample table settings we can also filter, limit, and order the sample table based on a specified column. For more information, please see the associated video. And lastly, I'd like to add the standard curve fit content to a separate sheet named Fit Details. Let's recalculate our results. Now on our report, you can see 3 separate sheets: Unknown Results, Standard Results, and Fit Details. I'm happy with these results and I'm ready to publish to MyAssays2.com. So to do this, I will save my changes and close the protocol and navigate to my MyAssays2.com homepage. Once I'm signed in, I'll select the My Protocols tab and select to Publish Protocol. I'll browse for and select my protocol file and press Next. I'd like to publish to a new assay with public visibility, and this is a single plate assay, so I'll deselect the multiple plate checkbox and press Next. Here we could edit the assay name and link and press Next. And on the last step, we can press Publish to publish our assay. Once our assay is published, it'll appear in our My Protocols tab, and we can select the folder icon to open the assay. Now we can perform analysis completely online, and you can share this URL with your colleagues to allow them to perform their own analyses without needing MyAssays Desktop installed on their PC. I have another data set, which we can import by selecting Choose File, and selecting our data file and pressing Open. And here you can see the data was successfully imported. We can select to edit the plate layout if need be, update the standard concentrations, and add sample IDs as needed. Pressing Calculate returns an interactive chart for both the XY reduction fit parameter and the standard curve fit, as well as our Excel-based report. And our report does show the results separated onto 3 sheets as we specified in the MyAssays Desktop protocol. Now, what if we'd like to have a nice branded page-based report? We can do that by editing the protocol in MyAssays Desktop and republishing it to myassays2.com. For a demonstration of this process, please see the next video in the series. If you have any questions about how to create a custom Kinetic protocol in MyAssays Desktop and publish it to myassays2.com, please email us at support@myassays.com.